1.0, they did not mirror World of Warcraft at all. And so somebody coming over from WoW trying to play 14.1.0 immediately was like, it's a whole different language and a different understanding. It causes a point of friction that doesn't necessarily need to be there. What do you think?
Shooters have already solved that. Like every shooter, because shooters was developed across a very weird set of iterations where you have things like, you have games where you just move inherently differently. You have games where it's like a twitch shooter versus somebody with a lot of shield. You have games where like the movement is more of a core component. You have games where the movement allows sorts of verticality, double jumps, boosters, all sorts of things like that. Like shooters have already solved this. You go into Halo and they have their default Halo layout, and then you go into the settings and it has like 20 other button layouts that are based on every other popular shooter. So like saying a control scheme is like, oh, well, players were trained on this and we play differently, so they're just screwed. Like, no, you can just say like, okay, and then here's the other set of hotkeys that is the traditional for this type of player. You can welcome them in. I played a ton of Minecraft. I have played thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of Minecraft over the years.
Yeah.
And that is a purely sandbox game. So to say that I don't have sandbox experience would be disingenuous. And yet when I play Minecraft, the first thing I do is I swap my movement keybinds to match those of an MMO, because I'm playing an MMO at the same time, and I don't play WASD, I play ESDF, which I've changed in most MMOs too. I understand it makes me weird. I just changed the keybind. So to say that like the keybinds, all you have to do is have a keybind menu. I don't think keybinds inherently make games good or bad. I think you're talking about just literal accessibility at that point. And so like, I don't know that adding keybinds to a game is the type of quality of life where I'd be concerned that somebody's like cheapened the experience. I think keybinds are fine. Just let people play, just like it should be, every game should support controller now. Like, just let it support controller. There's this idea of like controller's the reason a combat system is limited. No, it's not.
Oh.
Like, there are wildly complex control scheme, fighting games, Final Fantasy 14, native controller support, wildly complex amounts of buttons. It's fine. The reason you limit the number of buttons on a hotbar is because like in like a game like Diablo, if you let me bring an unlimited number of abilities, I become wildly overpowered. So you don't want me to have 25 buttons in Diablo 4. Everything they've shown about the system says it should be limited. That's not a controller limitation. And actually, in my experience, the more they have to think about multiple types of hotkeys, the more they have to think about whether or not they're going to support controller, the more they have to clean up things like, let's not make the vendor have 25 menus. Like, that's not like, so in my experience, the more you think about different types of players playing differently, the more you have to clean up some things that are actually just a lack of good, clean, crisp design.
Mm-hmm. So I brought up the controller scheme because that was an actual formal complaint from players coming into Final Fantasy 14. So beyond control schemes, though, you bringing up sandbox, I would say our sandbox MMOs different from the sandbox of Minecraft. And in terms of that, like when you stepped into, obviously old school RuneScape, do you feel like, how does that ultimately make you feel, especially with all of the thousands and thousands of hours that you have with Final Fantasy 14, World of Warcraft, Guild Wars, things like that? Like, is there any points of friction that just don't fundamentally make sense or cause a level of confusion just based off of, like, again, like if you go and you live in a world and it all has kind of these, like, you bring up shooters, like, yeah, shooters all have some, barely, similar concepts, but then all of a sudden you step into a different kind of shooter, and let's say it did something radically different because there are different types of shooters. Like, sure. How is that friction overcome?
So, first of all, Minecraft is not a game when we're talking about what a game is in all these other games. It's an operating system. When you're comparing it to other games, it's an operating system. It's not a game. So like the experience that my nephew has playing Minecraft on an iPad, and the experience that my niece has playing Minecraft on a console, and the experience that, you have if you play Minecraft on your PC, just base Minecraft, is none of those are the game that I play. I play modded Minecraft on survival multiplayer servers. That is a very specific flavor. There's creative. I specifically play hardcore expert packs. like hardcore is a modifier of what the experts are. I don't play where if you die, you lose everything, but there usually is a pretty substantial cost. And so like I play, and I don't care if they're sky block ones or if they're out on an open world. I've also played the reverse of skyblock where you're underground the whole time. Like I don't care about that as much, but what I'm looking for is I play with a group of people. There is a group of people just like there is around me in RuneScape right now. We are all progressing on our own line. There are elements of my character that gain experience. There are elements that I have to work through various tech trees. I have to go on quests. I have huge goals. So like the way I play Minecraft is an MMO. The reason I don't categorize Minecraft as an MMO is because it does not always have to be an MMO. There is no way for Final Fantasy XIV to not be an MMO. It's always an MMO. In that way, Diablo 3 is not always an MMO because on Switch, it offers this offline version. And that's not the same. It's just not. The fact that it can even be played. The game should be fundamentally flawed if you are not on a live perpetual server. And I play Minecraft on rented servers. They are live 24/7, which means if I set up a machine to process logs and I set up a tree farm to grow trees, when I come back after I go to bed at night, I have 10,000 logs. So like it's like the way I play it is an MMO. And so absolutely I would compare it to what I'm experiencing in RuneScape, and like I have while we played it. But the reason I don't list Minecraft off because there are a lot of gamers that think that they're above Minecraft. Because they just don't understand how vast the game is. Like I've had to go read wikis on how nuclear power plants work because I was trying to progress in Minecraft and the mod was poorly documented. And I was trying to fundamentally make a feeder reactor, and then the mod author didn't write a guide. So like Minecraft is vast. It can absolutely be an MMO.
So like on that space, so like you have that kind of experience. Do you feel that somebody who does not have the sandbox experience, only a theme park style MMO experience, like, would struggle or run into hurdles? Or is that, or is it just like saying somebody who likes Mario doesn't necessarily translate to somebody who likes like a fighting game, for example?
It's the same as anything, right? Like I've done my first 2 triathlons and I've had to learn a lot. I had ridden a bike before, I had run before, I had a pool growing up, but wasn't a very good swimmer and I had to go take swim lessons. But I can learn it. And so like they're different games. I think one of the things that we do within gaming is we fragment off people who don't like the same games as us. And so we take 2 games within a genre or take 2 different genres and we describe them as different gamers. But we forget that many times people play both. There are a lot of people that play Final Fantasy XIV that are excited about Final Fantasy 16, but it's a fundamentally different experience. So there will also be people that play Final Fantasy 14 that don't like Final Fantasy 16, and vice versa. Yeah. So like, it's just going to depend on the individual game, on whether or not you like that game. And you may find that like, I don't like MOBAs as a whole. I've tried like 10 of them. And so it's gotten to the point where it's like,
I'm with you 100% on MOBAs. I just cannot get into them.
They just don't do it for me. I've tried and tried and tried. And every time I go, well, you just had a bad one. But at like some point you've tried every version of sweet potato and yam and you're like, maybe I just don't like this.
Right.
And so like, I would say there are going to be people that like sandbox and more theme park style MMOs, and they're different. I like a little bit of both. I just like MMOs. And so I have yet to find an MMO that I don't find any redeeming value in.
Right.
But based on how much time they ask for, I do tend to take the ones that give me more than one element of like, that was fun. So I think there are people that can like both, and there's definitely a learning curve between them. But a lot still carries. Like we say it like they're like a game is purely sandbox or purely theme park, and they're not. They're not.
Right. I think that's why like I look at the future of the MMO genre as they continue to bring in the best elements of both kind of systems. Because I agree with you. Like I view sandbox and theme park MMOs almost as like really two different categories of a game because of what it's proposing to do. And that's usually where like my frustration comes when I hear somebody who's like, let's say there's nothing wrong if you like and prefer a theme park, because in chat they're like, yeah, I've tried a couple sandboxes, it doesn't resonate with me. There's nothing wrong with you. Like that's a perfectly fine solution. Like I've played this game just like Chris and I, like we're united on our hate of MOBAs and our hate of yams. Like those are 2 things that we share oddly in common. And we live in Texas. We can start like boiling it down. Why are we friends? Like we get together and we hate on yams and we don't understand MOBAs. But the at its core, like I always kind of view those as two separate. And when it's just the same thing. Like if I was looking at a theme park MMO and be like, it's not a good sandbox. Well, like it wasn't proposed to be. It's not trying to be that. And I think there's like when you look at those within the genre, these are two strong subgenres. And I do think the future is them blending the best of both worlds. The sandbox allowing players to have kind of some creative control. And we see those elements like in Final Fantasy 14 with housing, with RP, with a couple of these things that allow that to bring that into that game. And then vice versa, we're seeing more story to elements and how they deliver story brought into other games, like in the case of like New World, but also it'll be interesting to see how Pax Dei, handles it, because they're proposing themselves to be that real sandbox style. And I think what you brought up with the phone and old school RuneScape is that adding in that level of accessibility and bringing the player wherever they are. We talked about this, like when you start talking about login queues for classic WoW, like, can I just queue up and say, hey, I'm heading home from work. Can I queue up so that way by the time I get home and make dinner, the servers will let me in? There's all these aspects of technology that I think overall, from my perspective, is that MMOs are about to really uniquely have some really strong cases for addressing issues that have developed with the genre over the last 20 years, like server queues, accessibility, scalability, and availability, in that regards. But I'm excited that you're enjoying old school RuneScape, because ultimately what will be kind of cool to see is that, like, when we start talking about the next Final Fantasy MMO, like what elements of, old school RuneScape of Final Fantasy 11 makes sense with the newest technology, what elements of 16 and 14 story narrative makes sense and bring in, a lot of strengths there as well. So I really am looking forward to seeing what 16 delivers on as a game itself, because that is the team that built Heavensward. That is the Yoshi P, like from the ground up. Like, let's see what he's got. And so I think June's, regardless of whether you have a PS5 or not, I think June's going to be a really exciting month.
My concern with that is that people have hyped it to the point where like Michael Jordan played baseball. And so like they just, like that's not the thing he's remembered for. Yeah. Like, he's probably remembered more for Hanes underwear commercials than playing baseball. And so like because he was probably better at doing Hanes underwear commercials than playing baseball. Like I just think that Yoshi P's got this opportunity, and that's really cool, and I hope it goes well. It doesn't make him any less of a like genre defining change in what somebody can do for Final Fantasy 14 and MMOs in general. Mm-hmm. Even if it turns out that building a offline single player game from the ground up is not his skill set. He's also not the only person working on that game. So I think people have really focused on him. He's not even both director and producer like he is on 14. So like it's not even mostly his team. Like he's there with a whole bunch of other people. And so if it's successful, it's not just because it's not like just put Yoshi P on any project and it'll be successful. It's also not, if it's not successful, we'll just blame Yoshi P. Like, it's infinitely more complex than that, but I do hope it's a great game.
Yeah, I'm with Cloud, because Yoshi P's superpower is project management. And that's one thing that I think when you look at Square Enix's multiple studios, that is a clear differentiator in terms of deliverability, on time, and then at the same time, not requiring a 4090 to enjoy the game, So there's some aspects there. Like, I get what you're saying, but I think that what we've seen Yoshi P do is manage projects, is bring the people together, the right people together, to build out his dream team to achieve things that obviously he can't just do on his own. No one person could make Final Fantasy 14. No one person could make 16. But in order to get a team and have that focus and that vision, I think that's, and that's where it's like, it's going to be, I'm sure there will be some interesting fall off. There will be interesting fall off with 16, because no matter what, it's locked behind the PS5. No matter what, these things are going to be true. People are going to have to wait who don't want to buy it on a PS5 and will wait for PC. One of the things that, like, I probably will get it on PC for ultra wide support, even after I've beaten it on PS5, because ultra wide really is a beautiful experience if you get the opportunity to have something like that. But that's something that is still frustrating. And no matter how many people and how many Sony PlayStation defenders come out of the woodworks in the comment section, I don't care. I think it's foolish not to release it on PC in 2023. Yeah, 2013. Jeez.